I'm Ira Glass of This American Life. And let's begin these tales of fearless crime fighters with this story about a police officer in a suburban community somewhere on the East Coast.
There was nothing going on. Saturday night in this village, really quiet, super cold. And this call came over for unknown animal in a house. And it was on my post. It was about 5 minutes away. So myself and another car were assigned the call, and we show up there. And luckily for me, it was another guy who was pretty new. So we walk up to the door with all our stuff on, the nylon coat, the vest, the belt, the whole 9 yards. And the door opens, and the guy who is behind the door, he's about 30. I was 23 at the time. He's about 30. He looks like a broker, a lawyer. He's just really well put together, nice guy, wearing glasses. He's wearing these like silk pajamas with a monogram, got my attention.
Wow.
And he's going, listen, I'm really sorry to bother you. Normally I'd handle this sort of stuff on my own, but my wife really insists that I call. And so we ask him what the problem is. He says, well, we were having kind of a romantic evening down in the living room, and we heard this scratching upstairs, so I ran upstairs to see what it was, and it turns out it's coming from the attic. There's something up there, and it's just running around, knocking a few small things over. I can't tell what it is. It could be a squirrel or raccoon. I really don't know. So the other cop that I was with said, well, we really don't handle that. It's not so much a police function. It's, but we do have numbers of these private contractors who'll come in, and they'll put a humane trap down, and they'll remove the animal for you, and it's really not such a big deal, but it's really not our thing. So right as he was in the middle of saying that and getting us off the hook, the guy swings the door back, and there's his wife, who was just beautiful. She was beautiful. She was probably about 26 or 27, but just really beautiful, like perfect skin, long blonde hair, great teeth, brilliant blue eyes, a really nice smile, just like beautiful and friendly. If she had said, eat this broken glass, I just would have said, okay, broken glass it is, that's fine. But she seemed really nice, so I was going to be like Galahad. So I just threw my arm back into this guy's chest, into my partner's chest, and I said, Mark, we can handle this. It'll be okay. And she was oh, thank you so much. And she was really sweet, and I was like struck dead. So we walk inside, and she goes, I'm going to throw a pot of coffee on. And we go upstairs. We follow the man of the house upstairs, and we're underneath one of those trap doors that goes into the attic with the staircase that folds out.
Right.
And we do hear an animal upstairs scratching away, just kind of scuttling around the floor. And there's definitely something up there, and it's making pretty good speed up, going from one end of the roof to the other. So I reached up, and I took the trapdoor down. We unfolded the ladder. Now I have this big, heavy flashlight, like your cop flashlight, the 4D cells, the metal case, the whole thing.
Right.
And I shine it up through the hole in there, and it's pretty black. I can see the rafters, but really nothing else around there. And I start up the ladder. Now the guy who owned the house is standing almost directly underneath me, just to the side of the ladder, looking straight up at me. And my partner was at the base of the ladder, right behind me. So just before I stuck my head through this like black hole, I just kind of paused. Like I crunched my body up underneath, because I'm realizing, I don't know where this thing is. The second we pulled down the trap door, all noise upstairs just ceased. So I was kind of nervous, and I was like, well, I look like an idiot just crouched up here on the top of the ladder. So I took the flashlight, and I just popped my head up, turned the light on again, and about 6 inches from the front of my face was this squirrel at eye level with me, kind of reared back on its legs. And I swear, from where I was standing, it looked like Godzilla. It just scared the heck out of me. I thought, it's a squirrel. It's going to be hiding somewhere. It's going to be terrified of me. It was 6 inches away from me. And it really startled me. So I kind of went, and jumped back. And the flashlight slips out of my hands. It's heavy. And it falls directly onto the nose of the guy who's looking straight up at me. And I don't think it broke it, but it did some damage. And his nose, his hands went up to his face. Blood just started pouring out between his hands.
This is the homeowner.
This is the homeowner. I lose my balance, and fall backwards directly onto my partner, and I pancake him. We're both on our backs. He's on his back. I'm on his stomach on my back, scuttling around like a beetle trying to get up in this really narrow hallway. It's a mess. The squirrel, while we're floundering around in the hallway, jumps down the stairs, boink, 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 lands on me, and takes off down the stairs.
How undignified.
It was terrible. It was terrible. So we're wondering, gee, where is the squirrel? And right at that second, the woman who lived there, you hear her scream. So my partner goes, well, we found the squirrel. It's wherever she is.
Yeah.
So we go running downstairs, and the squirrel had come into the living room where they had been having their romantic evening. They had a fire going. They had pillows arranged around one corner of the couch next to the fire, and they had champagne flutes out. And nice house, really nice. I mean, it just smelled brand new. New carpeting, new rugs, new paint. They hadn't been there for that long. So the squirrel, when it bolted down the staircase, took off into the living room and ran underneath a couch for cover. So we run downstairs. This guy is bleeding all over the place on his carpets. His wife looks and says, what have you done? What have you done to my husband? And I start going, oh, it was an accident. And I just stop in mid-sentence. What's the point? We've only been there about 2 minutes. So the squirrel is underneath the couch, and my partner's going, let's get out of here. This is just, it's not going well. So I'm not beaten yet. I always have another idea. So the squirrel is under this couch, which is in the middle of the room. So I have this bright idea. Why don't we move the furniture away from one of the corners, and we'll put the couch in the corner, and the squirrel will probably move along with the couch because it's the only cover available to it. And once we get into the corner, we'll only have 2 open sides of the couch to worry about. So we did that.
That is so tactical.
Yes. Yeah, I was very proud of myself at that instant. But, I asked her for a box, and she says, sure, we've got boxes. We just moved in. We have nothing but boxes. She runs out to the garage, and she comes back with a box. And the box is long enough, and it fits across the entire short side of the couch where the armrest would be. So I start sweeping underneath the couch with my nightstick, trying to move the squirrel toward the box, figuring we'll capture it and just get rid of it, and we'll be out of here, and there'll be no more, mayhem. So it's actually working very well, and the squirrel's moving down along. You can hear it. It's chittering, and I'm trying not to hurt it. I feel I'm nervous about the thing. It might bite me. I don't want to hurt it, really. It's just an animal.
Right.
So I'm moving it along, and everything's going very well. And then with about 8 inches to go, I took one more swipe, and the thing just bolted out from underneath the couch. It was lined with tassels. I couldn't really see into the couch. It bolted out from underneath the couch and ran directly into the fireplace, which is about 3 feet away. The fireplace was directly ahead of it, and it ran into the fire.
Oh, my.
And caught on fire and ran directly back out and directly back under the couch.
Is it on fire?
It was on fire. Yeah, the tail, the bushy fur, the whole bit. I mean, it wasn't flaming or anything, but there was, it was smoking, and there was a little bit of fire coming off the tail. So it runs back under the couch, and the couch catches on fire in seconds. I mean, in seconds, it must have had dust under there or something else, but it caught on fire immediately. And my partner and I just don't even talk. We just grab the couch, heave it upside down, and now there's plenty of oxygen now for the fire to really get going, and it starts up, and we're patting it out, and it's sort of getting away from us. So we grab the only thing that's really available, and those are these really nice silk pillows, and we have one in each hand, the both of us, and we're just windmilling away at this fire on the couch, and we put it out, but it's smoking terribly, and it was a disaster. The couch is upside down. The bottom of it is burnt. The house is filling with smoke from the couch. The squirrel, when it went into the couch in its death throes, just latched onto the bottom of the couch. It's like this smoking piece of gristle underneath the couch, latched on there with its claws, and we're pounding, smearing it all over the place, and the smoke alarms are firing away. The guy's standing in his, with handkerchiefs and paper towels up around his nose, which is still bleeding. His pajamas are a mess. They're covered with blood, the front of them. And we finally get the fire out, and we're both completely red, sweating because we're dressed for like 0-degree weather and it's hot there by the fire. We're mortified. The house is full of smoke. The wife just looks around and just starts to cry. She goes, What have you done? What have you done to my house? You could see her just like clicking things off on her fingers. Okay, the dead squirrel, ruined pillows, need a new couch. The walls are covered with soot. The fire alarms are going off. My husband's disfigured. And then she really kind of just lost it. And he was just looking at us and shaking his head like he couldn't believe that these two idiots showed up and did this to his house over nothing, really. And he just goes, you really haven't done anything wrong. I can't point to any one thing that you did that I have a reason to get angry about. You really haven't done anything wrong. I mean, we did call you. But I can't thank you for this. They call for a squirrel. They end up with like $3,000, $4,000 worth of damage and a broken nose. And this is all within about 5 minutes.
Could that have happened to you now, 13 years later?
There's always a new mistake to be made. I don't think I would make that particular mistake. I mean, you make plenty of mistakes. That's just part of that job. You're going to make hundreds. You're going to make thousands of mistakes. You're going to make thousands of mistakes until you really get a handle on what you're doing. And with police work, they afford you plenty of space to make mistakes. But there's things that, if you get involved in things that aren't your responsibility, or that you're really not equipped to handle, or that you don't have a specific plan, a plan that's thought through to a conclusion, you probably should reevaluate what you're doing.
Yeah, now that you mention that, yeah, that's right. You walk into the house thinking, okay, we'll get the squirrel. Like, how were you going to get the squirrel? What was the best case scenario?
That's a great question. I guess I was thinking that I would go up there in the attic and find this cowering squirrel and somehow kind of lure it into some kind of a trap and then walk out with it and be like a hero. But as it turned out, the squirrel, it was a Pyrrhic victory for the squirrel, but the squirrel definitely won. The squirrel really, kicked our ass.
That is not what you want to be saying at the end of the day.
No. I mean, it took me a long time to even tell people about it. It was so new. I didn't want to know, what a bonehead I was when I first came onto the job.
There is a limit to what police can do, of course. Lots of crimes are forever unsolved. Stuff disappears and is never found again. And so we wish for special powers, as if that could solve everything. Which brings us to our next story.
Once there was an orphan who had a knack for finding lost things. Both his parents had been killed when he was 8 years old. They were swimming in the ocean when it turned wild with waves, and each had tried to save the other from drowning. The boy woke up from a nap on the sand, alone. After the tragedy, the community adopted and raised him, and a few years after the death of his parents, he began to have a sense of objects even when they weren't visible. This ability continued growing in power through his teens, and by his 20s he was able to actually sniff out lost sunglasses, keys, contact lenses, and sweaters. The neighbors discovered his talent accidentally. He was over at Jenny Sugar's house one evening, picking her up for a date, when Jenny's mother misplaced her hairbrush and was walking around complaining about this. The young man's nose twitched, and he turned slightly towards the kitchen and pointed to the drawer where the spoons and knives were kept. His date burst into laughter. "Now that would be quite a silly place to put the brush," she said, "among all that silverware." And she opened the drawer to make her point, to wave with a knife or brush her hair with a spoon, but when she did, boom, there was the hairbrush, matted with gray curls, sitting on top of the fork pile. Jenny's mother kissed the young man on the cheek, but Jenny herself looked at him suspiciously all night long. "You planned all that, didn't you?" she said over dinner. "You were trying to impress my mother." "Well, you didn't impress me," she said. He tried to explain himself, but she would hear none of it, and when he drove his car up to her house, she fled before he could even finish saying he'd had a nice time, which was a lie anyway. He went home to his tiny room and thought about the word lonely and how it sounded and looked so lonely, with those two L's in it, each standing tall by itself. As news spread around the neighborhood about the young man's skills, people reacted in two ways. There were the deeply appreciative and the skeptics. The appreciative ones called up the young man regularly. He'd stop by on his way to school, find their keys, and they'd give him a homemade muffin. The skeptics called him over too and watched him like a hawk. He'd still find their lost items, but they'd insist it was an elaborate scam and he was doing it all to get attention. Maybe, declared one woman, waving her index finger in the air, maybe, she said, he steals the thing so we think it's lost, moves the item, and then comes over to save it. How do we know it was really lost in the first place? What is going on? The young man didn't know himself. All he knew was the feeling of a tug, light but insistent, like a child at his sleeve. And that tug would turn him in the right direction and show him where to look. Each object had its own way of inhabiting space and therefore messaging its location. The young man could sense, could smell an object's presence. He did not need to see it to feel where it put its gravity down. As would be expected, items that turned out to be miles away took much harder concentration than the ones that were 2 feet to the left. When Mrs. Allen's little boy didn't come home one afternoon, that was the most difficult of all. Leonard Allen was 8 years old and usually arrived home from school at 3:05. He had allergies and needed a pill before he went back out to play. That day, by 3:45, alone Mrs. Allen was a wreck. Her boy rarely got lost. Only once had that happened, in the supermarket, but he'd been found quite easily under the produce tables, crying. The walk home from school was a straight line, and Leonard was not the wandering kind. Mrs. Allen was just a regular neighbor, except for one extraordinary fact. Through an inheritance, she was the owner of a gargantuan emerald she called the Green Star. It sat, glass-cased, in her kitchen where everyone could see it because she insisted that it be seen. Sometimes, as a party trick, she'd even cut steak with its beveled edge. On this day, she took the Green Star out of its case and stuck her palms on it. "Where is my boy?" she cried. The Green Star was cold and flat. She ran weeping to her neighbor, who calmly walked her back home. Together they gave the house a thorough search, and then the neighbor, a believer, recommended calling the young man. Although Mrs. Allen was a skeptic, she thought anything was a worthwhile idea, and when the phone answered, she said, in a trembling voice, "You must find my boy." The young man had been just about to go play basketball with his friends. He'd located the basketball in the bathtub. "You lost him?" said the young man. Mrs. Allen began to explain, and then her phone clicked. "One moment, please," she said, and the young man held on. When her voice returned, it was shaking with rage. "He's been kidnapped," she said. "They want the Green Star." The young man realized then that it was Mrs. Allen he was talking to and nodded. "Oh," he said, "I see." Everyone in town was familiar with Mrs. Allen's Green Star. "I'll be right over," he said. The woman's voice was too run with tears to respond. In his basketball shorts and shirt, the young man jogged over to Mrs. Allen's house. He was amazed at how the Green Star was all exactly the same shade of green. He had a desire to lick it. By then, Mrs. Allen was in hysterics. "They didn't tell me what to do," she sobbed. "Where do I bring my emerald? How do I get my boy back?" The young man tried to feel the scent of the boy. He asked for a photograph and stared at it, a brown-haired kid at his kindergarten graduation. But the young man had only found objects before, and lost objects at that. He'd never found anything or anybody stolen. He wasn't a policeman. Mrs. Allen called the police, and one officer showed up at the door. "Oh, it's the finding guy," the officer said. The young man dipped his head modestly. He turned to his right, to his left, north, south. He got a glimmer of a feeling towards the north and walked out the back door through the backyard. Night approached, and the sky seemed to grow and deepen in the darkness. "What's his name again?" he called back to Mrs. Allen. "Leonard," she said. He heard the policeman pull out a pad and begin to ask basic questions. He couldn't quite feel him. He felt the air, and he felt the tug inside the green star, an object displaced from its original home in Asia. He felt the tug of a tree in the front yard, which had been uprooted from Virginia to be replanted here. And he felt the tug of his own watch, which was from his uncle. In an attempt to be fatherly, his uncle had insisted he take it, but they both knew the gesture was false. Maybe the boy was too far away by now. He heard the policeman ask, "What is he wearing?" Mrs. Allen described a blue shirt, and the young man focused in on the blue shirt. He turned off his distractions, and the blue shirt came calling from the northwest, like a distant radio station. The young man went walking, and about 14 houses down he felt the blue shirt shrieking at him. And he walked right into the backyard, right through the back door, and sure enough, there were 4 people watching TV, including the tear-stained boy with a runny nose eating a candy bar. The young man scooped up the boy while the others watched, so surprised they did nothing. And one even muttered, "Sorry, man." For 14 houses back, the young man held Leonard in his arms like a bride. Leonard stopped sneezing and looked up at the stars, and the young man smelled Leonard's hair, rich with the memory of peanut butter. He hoped Leonard would ask him a question, any question, but Leonard was quiet. The young man answered in his head. "Son," he said to himself, and the word rolled around, a marble on a marble floor. "Son," he wanted to say. When he reached Mrs. Allen's door, which was wide open, he walked in with quiet Leonard, and Mrs. Allen promptly burst into tears, and the policeman slunk out the door. She thanked the young man 1,000 times, even offered him the green star, but he refused it. Leonard turned on the TV and curled up on the sofa. The young man walked over and asked him about the program he was watching, but Leonard stuck his thumb in his mouth and didn't respond. "Feel better," he said softly. Tucking the basketball beneath his arm, the young man walked home, shoulders low. In his tiny room, he undressed and lay in bed. Had it been a naked child with nothing on, no shoes, no necklace, no hair bow, no watch, he could not have found it. He lay in bed that night with the trees from other places rustling, and he could feel their confusion. No snow here. Not a lot of rain. Where am I? What is wrong with this dirt? Crossing his hands in front of him, he held onto his shoulders. Concentrate hard, he thought. Where are you? Everything felt blank and quiet. He couldn't feel a tug. He squeezed his eyes shut and let the question bubble up. Where did you go? Come find me. I'm over here. Come find me. If he listened hard enough, he thought he could hear the waves hitting.
Flight versus invisibility. This question is only for you.
This is writer John Hodgman.
Whichever you pick, You'll be the only person in the world to have that particular superpower. You can't have both. Which do you choose? I started wondering about this a few years ago. I'd bring it up at parties, dinners, wedding receptions. It was more interesting to ask them where people worked or where they went to school, and clearly more fun to answer. Like a magic word, Shazam, flight versus invisibility would instantly change an evening's character, opening passionate conversation and debate. But what surprised me more was how quickly everyone would choose, as though they had been thinking about it for a long time. Everyone knew exactly which superpower they wanted and what they would do with it. Their plans weren't always flashy or heroic. In fact, they almost never were.
If I could fly, the first thing I would do is fly into the bar, check out what's going on there, fly back home. I would attach my baby to me and fly to a doctor's appointment at 11:30, and fly right back. Then I think I would fly to Atlantic City.
I would imagine, like, if it got around that I had the power of flight, and it was a rare type of thing, I mean, there would definitely be flight groupies, I would imagine. So there's going to be just like, oh yeah, I just slept with a flying dude. You know, the people are just like, oh, score.
I go into Barney's, I pick out the cashmere sweaters that I like. I go into the dressing room, the woman says how many items, I say 5. I go into the dressing room, I put those 5 sweaters on, and I summon my powers of invisibility into the dressing room. I turn invisible, I walk out, leaving her to wonder why there's a tag hanging from the door that says 5 and no person inside.
So you would become a thief pretty quickly?
Immediately. Until I had all the sweaters that I wanted, and then I would have to think of other things to do.
Typically, this is how it goes. People who turn invisible will sneak into the movies or onto airplanes. People who fly stop taking the bus. Here's one thing that pretty much no one ever says. I would use my power to fight crime. No one seems to care about crime.
I don't think I would want to spend a lot of time using my power for good. I mean, if I don't have super strength and I'm not invulnerable, then, I mean, it would be very dangerous. If you had to rescue somebody from a burning building or something like that, you might, catch on fire.
Just having flight, I don't think is necessarily quite enough, because you don't have the super strength.
I'd still be weak when I got there, I guess. I don't fight crime now, and people without superpowers do, so sure, in theory, yes, but, I'm not I mean, what can I do with this? I mean, either one of those, you need a whole package. There's not much you can do with any one thing. I'd go to Paris, I suppose.
That's not being a superhero.
Well, they may, I could be going to Paris, man. That's sort of a superhero.
Going to Paris Man is not a superhero. And I have to say this drove me crazy a little bit. We are, after all, talking about superpowers. Why not take down organized crime? Bring hope to the hopeless? Swear vengeance on the underworld? If only a little bit. I proposed a variety of sample scenarios along these lines, such as, how would you handle a mad genius taking over the Empire State Building? And what I learned is, some people should simply not be fighting crime.
Well, the first thing that occurs to me is I somehow shove a sock in their mouth or something like that so they can't, and wrap some tape around their mouth so that they can't yell out. It might not be a sock, it might just be some napkins or something.
Do you think you would be tempted to enlist a teenage helper?
No, I think a helper would be good, a helper with the complementary power.
There's anybody else with superpowers?
Oh, it would just be a teenager hanging around me? No.
People who consider invisibility always want to know, Do I have to be naked? People who choose flight want to know how fast. Almost all asked who would win in a fight, Mr. Invisible or Flying Man. And so I had to lay down some rules. Invisibility means the power to become transparent at will, including your clothing, but anything you may pick up is visible. Flight means the power to fly at any altitude within the Earth's atmosphere, at speeds up to 1,000 miles per hour. But even then they start looking for loopholes, hidden catches, superpower fine print. They start negotiating their dreams with me.
Now, when you're flying, if you're flying at 1,000 miles an hour at 100,000 feet, are you comfortable? Do you get very cold? Let's say I'm in this room and I'm invisible, and I'm walking around this apartment and I'm invisible. And yes, do I have to be completely quiet or you guys will hear my footsteps? Yes. Because that's a pain in the ass. And also someone has to let you in.
Can I carry somebody? Can somebody go on my back?
Can you carry someone on your back now?
Little people, yeah.
Then you can carry little people on your back.
Done. Flight it is.
This is all part of what I call the 5 stages of choosing your superpower. Sometimes this process occurs in just moments. For example, Subject A, a tallish man with glasses wedged into a cramped barroom corner, begins as they all do, with stage 1, gut reaction.
Initially, I would think perhaps invisibility.
Next comes stage 2, practical consideration.
Because you have the ability to walk around work, perhaps show up at one point, and perhaps go away for a little while and turn invisible and then come back and listen to what they say about you. You have the power to spy on your exes. And that would all be enlightening and fun and in fact a little bit perverted. And
you hear that doubt in his voice? That's the beginning of stage 3, philosophical reconsideration.
That would, I believe, it would immediately turn into a life of complete depression. You wouldn't be able to really share it with anyone because and I know there'd be some problems with the perversion thing.
Stage 4, self-recrimination.
Invisibility leads me as an invisible person down a dark path, because you're not going to want to miss out when you're invisible on, no matter how many times you've seen a woman naked in the shower, you're going to want to see it again because there's always a different woman, right? And there's a lifetime of that, and that's not acceptable behavior, no matter whether you're invisible or not.
And finally, stage 5, acceptance.
Yeah, I'd have to go with flight.
So who chooses invisibility and who chooses flight? In my experience, though there are lots of exceptions, men lean toward flying, women to invisibility. And many brood anxiously over their choice, switching from one to the other and back again. And that's because, more than the ability, say, to burst into flame or shoot arrows with uncanny accuracy, flight and invisibility touch a nerve. Actually, they touch 2 different nerves, speak to very different primal desires and unconscious fears. My friend Christine chose invisibility.
One superpower is about something that's obvious, and the other is about something that is hidden. I think it indicates your level of shame.
How do you mean?
A person who chooses to fly has nothing to hide. A person who chooses to be invisible wants clearly to hide themselves.
Do you feel that you want to hide yourself?
I want to, I'd like to not, I'm not going to answer that question.
It all has to do with guile. Wanting to be invisible means that you're a more guileful person. If you want to fly, it means you're guileless. And I think the reason that I'm so conflicted about flying versus invisibility is that I have guile, but I really wish that I didn't.
Flight is the hero, selfless and confident and unashamed, and invisibility, the villain. Almost everyone I talked to called invisibility the sneakier power.
Flying is for people who want to let it all hang out. Invisibility is for fearful, crouching masturbators.
First of all, I think that a lot of people are going to tell you that they would choose flight, and I think they're lying to you. I think they're saying that because they're trying to sound all mythic and heroic, because the better angels of our nature would tell us that the real thing that we should strive for is flight, and that that's noble and all that kind of stuff. But I think actually, if everybody were being perfectly honest with you, they would tell you the truth, which is that they all want to be invisible so that they can shoplift, get into movies for free, go to exotic places on airplanes without paying for airline tickets, and watch celebrities have sex.
Anyone faced with this choice in their heart of hearts will choose invisibility.
Yes. Or they have this sort of inflated, heroic, mythical concept of themselves, and that, in fact, they're not really giving it very much practical thought.
In the end, it's not a question of what kind of person flies and what kind of person fades. We all do both. Perhaps that's why, when I put the choice to myself, I'm hopelessly, completely stuck. At the heart of this decision, the question I really don't want to face is this: who do you want to be? The person you hope to be? Or the person you fear you actually are? Don't rush into it. Think it over. Which would you choose?
You know, a reporter isn't supposed to go out on a story with big preconceived ideas. And so I'm just going to admit up front that when I had the chance to go out with a real-life private eye, this is what I expected. I expected that, contrary to what you see on TV and in the movies, real detective work was going to turn out to be, you know, mundane, dull, long hours, not terribly glamorous. And in fact, the first day I spent with Detective Jonathan Rosenberg of Tower Investigations here in Chicago, I was not disappointed. When I arrived at his office, he was statementizing. That was the word he used, statementizing, meaning typing up statements from witnesses he'd interviewed. Example?
Okay, so the black Mazda had a green light. That was the investigator. The witness answered, a green light, correct. Investigator, do you know how fast the fire engine was traveling? Witness, oh God, I have no idea, but it was 40 miles or maybe more. Investigator, okay, do you know how fast the black vehicle was traveling?
Not exactly the Rockford Files. Jonathan Rosenberg's 29, dressed for work in a black T-shirt and jeans. A steady supply of Newport Lights and Diet Cherry Cokes get him through the day. He says he wasn't one of those kids who read detective books, stories about G-men, and dreamed of being a private eye.
I find generally those people don't really, they're totally disappointed what the profession really entails. It's a lot more work, it's a lot less exciting as it's portrayed.
Jonathan does accident investigations and workers' comp claims and insurance cases. He tracks people down and he serves them legal papers. About 40% of his business is surveillance work on domestic cases, which is really just a polite way of saying he spies on people's spouses to find out if they're cheating. He let me come with him on one of these cases. The first trick to going out on surveillance, Jonathan tells me, is fill up the gas tank. You have no idea how far you're going to have to drive. Today's client is a husband who's become suspicious of his wife, and he was willing to put up $50 an hour, plus expenses, to have her followed. 10 hours paid up front. She's been going out a lot, with excuses that don't seem plausible.
She's out on weekends. She leaves early on weekends. She started dressing a little bit, more sexier, you could say, to when she's going to work. You know, that's usually a signal. You know, also if they start losing weight, you know, if they had a weight problem or they start working out a lot, you know.
Today, she's supposed to be going out after work with her girlfriends from her job. We're going to wait by the store where she works and follow her to see if that's where she goes.
Because what we're going to do when I first get there is I'm going to look for the vehicle that the client described to me that his wife drives.
Now, did he give you a picture or something? Do you know what she looks like?
Yes, I have a photograph here.
Let's see. I have to admit here that when I saw the photo, I was completely floored. Somehow, based on, I guess, 1,000 detective stories, I had assumed that these would be middle-aged people. You know, mature people in a marriage that had gone stale over years. But the woman in this photo was 25 years old, beamingly happy. A suburban girl on vacation in Disneyland or someplace like that.
Okay, now the trick here is looking for the vehicle.
We circle the store where she works, and we find her car easily enough. It's out back. But finding out where we should go turns out to be surprisingly tricky. We can't just park in the alley, because she'll see us. So we have to park at one end of the alley, but then which end? If we choose the south end and she drives north, she could lose us, and then there's the fact that we need to see her without her noticing us. We find one position, but then a truck blocks our view. We move 2 more times. Who ever thought that this would be this complicated? Also, it's boring. I smoke one of Jonathan's Newport Lights simply to stay awake. Jonathan watches in his rearview mirror for the woman. He takes notes on the case. I take notes on him. And sitting in a car like this, in a way, it's just like you've seen in those, you know, those cop buddy movies. You really do start to talk about everything. Scarface. I didn't see Scarface. Was Scarface that good?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
Wow.
I like Al Pacino a lot. That's why.
All I heard about Scarface is just it's just real violent, right? That's all I heard was it was just real violent.
Yeah, it's real violent, but the story was really good, I thought, and the acting was excellent. I just thought it was a really well-made movie.
So you know what they call Big Mac in France?
Yes, I do. La Big Mac. The Royale with cheese is what threw me. I ordered one just to see what it was.
What was it?
It's just a quarter pounder. I was disappointed. I thought it was something different that's not in the States.
A half hour passes, and another half hour. If this woman was having an affair, she was in no hurry to get to the affair. Anyway, finally, after all the boredom, something happens.
Okay, that's our vehicle. And it looks like it's coming this way.
We spin around to follow her car, and we tail her for 15 minutes. Often, we are driving directly behind her, sometimes on nearly deserted streets, and still, she does not seem to notice, which Jonathan says is typical. And if this sounds incredible to you, okay, try this test. If you are hearing the sound of my voice in an automobile right now, let me ask you now, don't look in your rearview mirror, let me just ask you, what kind of car is behind you, and how long has it been there? No one pays attention to stuff like this.
Hello? Okay, your wife has just left about 10 minutes ago. We're in pursuit right now.
Finally, she pulls into a strip mall. She parks, we park, a little down the way. Jonathan opens up a map so we don't look so suspicious sitting there, though, of course, with cameras and tape recorders, we are the most suspicious-looking car imaginable. Then he pulls out binoculars, which only helps the whole effect. And sitting there, suddenly I realize I have no idea what is about to happen. The woman is sitting in front of a store like the same kind of store she works for, so perhaps it is possible she is going to be meeting friends who she knows from her job. On the other hand, all the women back at her job left separately in separate cars at separate times, so could they really be going out together? Why were we at this strip mall? Where were we headed next? In most jobs, you know pretty much what is going to happen when you arrive at work that morning. And it occurred to me at that moment that for Jonathan, that is simply not true. I gotta tell you, you're blowing the premise for my story. I was gonna come out with you. I was gonna say, well, this private investigative work, you think it's really glamorous and really kind of interesting if, see it on TV and movies. But really, if you hang around with the guys, it's kind of boring. But now I'm out with you, and I think I'm wrong. It is actually pretty interesting.
It is, but I mean, when you're saying that you're comparing it to Magnum PI or Simon and Simon, it really doesn't compare to that kind of excitement.
And at that moment, the car we're following pulls out and we pursue. And then she does something kind of strange, actually. She pulls into an alley and she waits.
She went straight down the alley, right?
Yeah. Do you think she's trying to lose us?
Well, I don't know.
We can't follow her without her noticing, so we circle the block. She backs up, then drives back into the alley. Then she circles the block. And finally, we solve the mystery of what she's doing. Jonathan, the trained detective, is the one who figures this out. She is not onto us. She's looking for a parking space. She gets out of the car, heads into a restaurant. It's a big, cheap, family-style restaurant. You know something? I don't think that she's having an affair, and I'll tell you why. It's because if you were having an affair with somebody, you would not go to this particular restaurant. It's just not romantic enough.
Right.
If you're out really for sex with somebody and you only got a couple hours,
right,
you're not going to go here.
That's true.
But looked at another way, maybe she is going to meet a guy here quickly, where no one would suspect them. I feel like I keep just going back and forth on whether I think that she's seeing somebody. Are you doing that too, or are you?
Well, no, I'm just.
You're neutral.
I'm just trying to find out information and report it.
Yeah, I know, but from moment to moment, don't you feel like you decide, yes, she must be, no, she can't be, yes, she must be, no, she can't be?
Not till I see it. I don't draw it. And this is the clinch. This is the clinch right now, because we know what we're here to find out is inside there.
Right.
And I know the answer's inside, so why start guessing?
Right.
I could just walk inside and tell you what the answer is.
And so we head into the restaurant. Jonathan leaves his cameras and his notebooks in the car. I leave my tape recorder. Jonathan says we'd be too conspicuous with that stuff. And when we walk in, we're both pretty much convinced that she's meeting girlfriends from work, just like she told her husband. So we go in, and we spot her right away, in a booth with a man. The way the restaurant is laid out, we can sit at the bar, our backs to the couple, and then watch everything they do in this big plate glass mirror that's behind the bar. They don't serve Diet Cherry Coke at this bar, so Jonathan orders a regular Diet Coke. And we sit there. His cell phone rings. It's the woman's husband. Jonathan gives him the news this way. He says quietly, "Apparently your suspicions were correct." The husband gets angry, which Jonathan says is unusual. For some reason, men in this situation, when they get this news, usually cry. Women get angry, in Jonathan's experience. I watch the couple in the mirror. She's telling the guy a story, gesturing with her hands. He laughs. I think, you have no idea what is about to hit you. I watch them. Someday that woman will look back on this night and she'll think, so when I drove to the restaurant, when I was driving there, I was being followed. When we sat talking that night, we were being watched, and I didn't know. She'll try to picture it. She'll try to put it together in her mind. Where did the detective wait? Where did he sit? What did he see her do? In the mirror, Jonathan and I watched the woman get a call on her cellular phone. She kind of pulls back a little bit from the guy who she's with and withdraws into herself a little bit. And we wonder, is that her husband calling her? Is he just messing with her? She talks. She hangs up. 30 seconds later, Jonathan's cell phone rings. It was him. He was messing with her. He was like, "So you out with the girls? Uh-huh. Where are you? And who's there?" "That lying bitch," he says to Jonathan. But for some reason, it's hard at this point to feel much sympathy for him. I have to tell you, the strangest thing about this whole scene is that there is no sex vibe between these two people. The man is shoveling food into his mouth with a kind of circular motion of his hand that is like the least sexy thing possible. It's crude. You watch him and you think, she is not going to bed with you if you're going to eat like that. And in fact, when they come out of the restaurant, they go their separate ways without even a kiss, without a hug. Jonathan snaps a few pictures of them outside. We follow the guy home, get his license plate numbers, get his address. It's an unusual case because 90% of the time, Jonathan says, when someone suspects a spouse of having an affair, the detective catches them, first time out. This case, he's not sure what's going on. He follows the woman for 5 more days, over $1,000 worth of surveillance, before finally he catches her actually going home with the guy. In the car, later, I asked Jonathan if his job ever gives him the creeps, following people around, secretly watching them in these vulnerable moments, photographing them and videotaping them, gathering evidence that'll probably destroy their marriages.
You know, that's always upsetting. You never really want to see that happen to people. But, you know, if it came to be that way, it did. I mean, it was through no fault of my own, and these people made their decision to do or partake in the activities they chose to partake. And, you know, if they're not being faithful to each other, then maybe they really, you know, shouldn't be married. You know, it's that old saying, it's better to find out now than later. Hello? I should be home about 9:30, 10 o'clock. But if I'll be home later, I'll call you. Okay. Love you too. Bye. It's the wife.
Jonathan's actually a newlywed. He's been married for only 8 months. And he says, yes, having this job has affected his view of marriage.
You know, how can it not? I mean, you're more careful about it because, you know, you see it, but it really hasn't affected me in a negative way with my relationship with my wife.
You were saying when we were inside that you guys joke about it, in fact.
Oh, yeah, we do. You know, if I ask her, you know, what time are you going to be home? And she'll be like, well, I'm not going to tell you. I got to go meet my boyfriend. I'll be like, all right, that's right. I'll, you know, find it out anyways. You know, I know it anyways. You don't need to tell me. You know, like I have a surveillance or a tail on her at that minute anyways. But we have a really good relationship.
As for me, for the next few days after the surveillance, I had this experience I have never had in my life. I was completely suspicious of everyone. At one point, I was waiting for somebody outside of McDonald's, and a guy in a black Corolla zooms in, just tears into the parking lot, kind of tears around the curve, pulls into a space. And I don't know why, I felt like, okay, I better start taking notes. I have them, right here. Man wore sunglasses, has crew cut, loud music blares from car. Jumps out, beefy guy, gives me suspicious look. I give him suspicious look. And then below here, on the notes, I have his license plate number. just in case. In case of what? I have no idea. Sometimes we are thrust into the role of the investigator, the private eye, the detective, whether we want that role or not. This happened to Jonathan Goldstein, as you'll hear in this next story. A quick warning that there is one famously nasty word in this story. It occurs exactly 8 times, though as professional broadcasters, we beep it every single time. Here's Jonathan.
The first thing you should know about my friend Josh is that he calls me a bitch squealer. Now, bitch isn't the bad word you're going to be hearing in this story, and that's because it's referring to an actual dog, a fenced-in security dog that barked at me and Josh while we were out walking one night. And while my scream may have been louder that evening, Josh's scream was definitely higher pitched, which to my mind means Josh should rightfully be called the bitch squealer, while perhaps I should be called something like bitch bellower or bitch loud crier. Just the same, quit your bitch squealing is what Josh says to me when I ask him to please change the station on the car radio, or to stop crowding the armrest in the movie theater. The other thing to know about Josh is that he thinks of himself as an idea man, and he always refers to his ideas as pure gold. So a few years ago, when I first started doing stories on the radio, I would call him up and ask him if he had any story ideas, and he always did. The thing was, most of them involved hot dog eating contests and all-nude car washes. One time Josh talked to a French-Canadian waitress who used the words diggy-doo as a conjunctive phrase, as in, my mother, she gave birth to me in Lac Saint-Louis, and, diggy-doo, I'm in Montreal. Josh tried to convince me that this semantically innovative young woman was most definitely worthy of a 40-minute interview on national radio. Just the other day, Josh was telling me about this really funny phone message that he heard back in his college days, and how I should definitely do a radio show about that. He swore to me that it was the defining moment in his class's campus life that year. Now, how's a person supposed to believe something like that? I mean, I can imagine you really liking this message.
Oh, I see.
But you see, I can't imagine it being the kind of thing that, you know, was like...
That your sedate NPR audience would appreciate?
No. I mean, I mean, it sounds like you got a kick out of it at the time. But I mean, you know, I mean, I can't imagine it being like an atomic bomb that hit the campus or something.
Yeah. See, this is clearly another example of the failure of your imagination. How many times have I given you ideas that you have naysayed? How many times have I given you gold standard ideas?
Josh yells at me a lot, especially when he thinks I'm not taking his ideas seriously. When we go out to eat, he yells at me loud enough to make the other patrons turn around and look at us. Sometimes, though, he'll get all unexpectedly silent and just stare out the restaurant window, and then turn to me and say something like, "Wouldn't life be better if there was a big old pig sitting out there by the fire hydrant? Why can't life be more like that?" But anyway, to get back to the phone message, the one Josh heard in college. I'm telling you about it not to demonstrate what a slightly misguided, colorful character Josh is, but to chart with honesty the unfairness of my preemptive bitch squeals of doubt.
I went to Columbia University in the early 90s, okay? Late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
When I was there, they had this phone system. I'll just give you a little bit of background, all right? And then I'll cut to the chase. They had this system there called the Roam system, Roam phone system, ROLM. And you could forward messages to people, okay? You could forward messages to everyone on campus if you wanted, okay?
Sort of like a precursor to the internet.
Yes, like a precursor to the internet. Thank you, Mr. Current Affairs guy. All right, so it was an amazing utility. People could forward all kinds of crazy messages.
Yeah.
And so one day there was this guy named Fred, okay, and he got this message. Well, his mother left him a message on his answering machine. Okay, and he forwarded it to, I don't know, maybe one or more of his friends. And his friends turned around and did a Brutus thing. They stabbed him in the back, and they forwarded this message across campus to everyone, okay? So, you want to hear the message?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, he prefaced it by saying...
Wait, you have it? You have the message?
I do not have the message. I have the message in my head. I'm telling you a story. All right?
Okay.
All right. So, the message, he prefaced it by some kind of sad little lead-in. In a little voice, he was like, I think you'd appreciate hearing this message from my mother. Okay? And then the message played. This was the entirety of the message. And I'm going to do the voice for you as best I can. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, sorry. More background. He had a hard. He was not a hit with the ladies, Fred. Okay, this is what I was led to understand. Okay, I'm not sure if this is true or not.
Okay.
But he had managed to score a date to go see The Little Mermaid, of all movies. Okay, The Little Mermaid. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the message his own mother Okay? His blood relation leaves for him.
Yeah.
And I quote, "You and the Little Mermaid can both go yourselves. The books you wanted, they're not here. They must be in La Jolla. I'm not going to wait up all night for you. Goodbye." That's the entirety of it, all right?
Yeah. That's the message that his mother left him.
That's correct. You catch that part? Yeah. You and the Little Mermaid can both go yourselves. I love you, son. Okay? That's gold. Hold on.
Yeah.
Then, are you going to listen?
Yes.
All right. Then somebody took it. I don't know. Some evil mixmeister genius took it and remixed it into a 12-inch dance version. All right? You know, you and the Little Mermaid, La Jolla, f yourselves, they're not here, the book, goodbye.
And there's other people who remember it.
Are you even listening to a word I just told you? This was the producers of its day, okay? It was, everyone heard about it, everyone knew it, everyone had an opinion about it. Every single person who attended Columbia that year I guarantee you they would know what I'm talking about.
I still didn't believe him. But just for the hell of it, I phoned the Columbia Alumni magazine to see if there was anyone there who might remember anything about the Little Mermaid message. I ended up speaking to someone who not only attended Columbia in the early 90s and remembered the message, but just like Josh had, he actually quoted it to me. The whole message. "You and the Little Mermaid can both go yourselves. I can't find the books. They must be in La Jolla. I'm not going to wait up all night for you. Goodbye." The guy then became so excited at the thought of someone doing serious research about the message that he offered to use the Columbia database to look up every Fred that might have graduated around that time. No matter how long it took, he said, it'd be worth it if I could track down some recording of the message and allow him to hear it again. I called other Columbia students from that period, and every one of them reacted the same way to the message. Like this guy, Ben Feldman, now an entertainment lawyer.
Hello?
Is this Ben?
Yes?
I have 2 words for you. Little Mermaid.
This is the funniest call I've ever received. Well, you and the Little Mermaid can go to hell.
A few days later, Josh called me back. He'd found out Fred's last name from his older brother, who it turns out graduated the same year as Fred. Josh said that Fred's last name was Schultz, and I told Josh that this was great news, and Josh told me to shut my squeal hole, which I did. So I called Fred Schultz, and it turns out that he had recorded the original message and still had a copy of it, a copy which I am now going to play for you. Remember, this is a phone message that was forwarded from one person to the next, each person re-prefacing the previous prefaces as it made its way from one voicemail message box to the next.
Received at 4:20 p.m. Friday. I have never heard a phone mail message like this one. Listen to the first person. You are gonna die.
No, seriously, this is the funniest one of all of them.
Alright, here it is.
These giddy introductory messages continue for 2.5 minutes, each one revving up the impending drama, acting as a kind of stage curtain that opens onto another curtain, and yet another one still, each one teasing you with the tantalizing proximity of the main stage about to be bathed in the spotlight.
Okay, I've gotten like 95 phone messages in the last 2 days, but this is the funniest. This is gonna blow you away. This makes the other ones look like chopped liver.
And then finally, the chain of deferral ends with the very first forwarded student's solemn pronouncement.
There comes a time in life when we hear the greatest phone mail message of all time, and well, here it is. You have to hear it to believe it. So you get a kick out of this message from my mother.
Hi, Fred. You and the Little Mermaid can go yourselves. I told you to stay near the phone. I can't find those books. You have other books here. It must be in La Jolla. Call me back. I'm not going to stay up all night for you. Goodbye.
These days, Fred Schultz lives in Venice Beach, California. He plays in a band, he skateboards, and he pretty much seems happy. When he sent me the recording of the Little Mermaid message, he also included burnt incense and a CD of his band's soundtrack for a film about cannibalism called Eat Me. Here's a clip. Fred's the kind of guy who, when the subject gets onto future plans, will tell you he's thinking pretty seriously about moving onto a boat. When I ask him about the phone message from his mom, he says that from the moment he got it, he knew he was sitting on something big. The question then became, what was he going to do with it?
I did sit down and stress and think about it for like an hour or two. I debated whether to send the message out to anyone, and then I sat down and listened to music and just thought about it, re-listening to the message and just thinking, should I send this along or just let it die, kill it, hit erase, you know?
But Fred decided not to hit erase, and he explains his mother's cryptic message this way. He'd called looking for an old-school notebook. She said she'd search for it, but only if he'd wait by the phone while she did this special favor for him. But did he stay by the phone? No, he did not. As for the Little Mermaid, this was the one thing Josh was completely wrong about.
My whole life, I have had a thing about mermaids. And dolphins, but mermaids.
When you love mermaids that much, and dolphins, you don't keep that to yourself. You don't hide that.
My outgoing message. First it had Ariel from The Little Mermaid singing Part of Your World, singing, like, part of your world, what would I give if I could live out of these waters? And then I jump on and say, hi, please leave a message for me in The Little Mermaid. And then you hear beep.
Now put yourself in his mother's shoes. To hear Joan Schultz, Fred's mom, tell the story, that outgoing message was like a call to arms.
I hear the Little Mermaid music, and he said, sorry, I can't answer you now. Please leave a message for me and the Little Mermaid. Well, that's all I had to hear. I was so infuriated and so incensed that without even thinking, and I never ever say this word, I said, Fred, you and the Little Mermaid can both go yourselves, and I slammed the phone down.
So late that night, studying in his dorm room for finals, Fred finally decides to forward the message to his friend Jeff. Then Fred goes to bed, and by the next morning, he wakes up to discover that just like one of those guys in one of those movies, his life has suddenly become forever changed.
My message machine was blinking that all 10 messages that it accepts are filled, and they were all filled with people, like chains of like 20. It had already gone around to say each chain had hit 20 or 30 people.
Like how many people heard it over the course of the night?
Hundreds had already heard it in the middle of the night.
Over the course of how many hours?
Like 4 hours.
What was then to follow for the Schultzes was nothing short of campus-wide celebrityhood. Women ran up to Fred and hugged him. Men envied him for his ability to inspire that much raw, transparent hostility in his mother. The phone message was so popular that, like a hit TV show, it spawned spin-offs. Other messages circulated with people commenting on the original.
As a history major, I think we've got to put this into a class struggle perspective. His mother represents...
Well, from a political science standpoint, I would say that both Fred and his mother are products of the political system.
I feel that Mrs. Schultz's sexual desire for her son Fred is manifest.
And Josh was even right about the dance remix version of the message.
And the Little Mermaid can go yourself. And the Little Mermaid can go yourself. Bye-bye. Bye. You bye-bye.
Although no official at Columbia could confirm this next claim, virtually everyone I spoke to who graduated Fred's year remembers this as a point of fact. The popularity of The Little Mermaid yielded message threads that were too long for the new voicemail technology to handle, and so the messaging service for the whole of Columbia crashed. It goes further still. Fred's mother's message went on to become the most crowd-pleasing musical number from the year-end Varsity Show, a time-honored all-male production that goes back to Columbia alumni Rodgers and Hammerstein in the early 1900s. The choreographed routine involved a kick line of hairy-legged men in seashell brassieres and mermaid tails. Steve Natick, the show's lyricist, dug out the words and favored me with a few select lines.
Oh, here it is. Look at that. But I don't even know if this was the final version because I see some handwritten notes on the side. It starts off, we beautiful creatures inhabit the sea, fish women frolicking frivolously. Although no one said that we'd have to enjoy ya, it still could be worse. We might be in La Jolla. and we sang In La Jolla as Handel's Messiah. So it's time to decide what you might want to do. We're not going to wait up all night for you. Goodbye.
As even the most casual viewer of VH1's Behind the Music knows, fame like this doesn't come without a price. When Fred's mother came to New York for her son's graduation, she experienced the darker side of superstardom.
On Broadway, in restaurants, in the shops there, they would say things like, "That's Fred's mother, that's the Little Mermaid." And I was mortified. Wherever we were, people would point and laugh and snicker.
So she just made it her job at that point to just walk up to any random group of people and just start saying, "You don't understand, I never used the F word. He provoked me. He provoked me." So she felt that that was her, responsibility to clear her name, to at least let them know she never curses.
Before my message came along, the funniest message they had sent around was something like other kids' mothers begging them not to forget to use their rubbers in the rainy season.
Here's an example of what Joan Schultz is talking about. This is a message from Huey Hockman's grandparents, making sure he was taking care of his cold.
Huey, we heard you have a cold, darling. We called to see how you feel. Yeah. To tell you we love you. Yeah. That's all. We hope you're okay, darling. Yeah.
Mine was so far and above that they won't even go back to the old one.
Do you take a certain level of pride in that?
I guess so. In a strange way, yes.
The Little Mermaid message was everything Josh said that it was. And now that I spoke with everyone about its glory, there was really only one more person left to talk to.
What do you want?
I made some calls to Columbia. I spoke to some people who went to school the same time that you did, and yes, I did. And Diggy Doo, you were right. It was all true. The message made a great impact.
Wow. Thanks, John. Listen, what a bastard you are. I gave you gold. Don't you understand?
But anyway, you're missing the point. What I'm saying is I'm saying that I apologize because you were right.
I, Diggy, don't give a rat's ass.
I'm going to read to you a piece of the script that I've written that I'm thinking I might actually end this whole story with, okay? Because I want to get some of your feedback, okay?
Oh, I'm ready.
I would say something defective. And so a recording intended for one person unintentionally became the beloved property of thousands. And in so happening, the message went from being what might have been considered a rather tragic personal artifact that spoke of dysfunction to becoming a triumph of contemporary American humor.
What is that? That's public radio pussy talk. Be a man.
No, a part of that whole statement is that I'm actually saying to you, you were right and I was wrong.
All right, whatever. If you want to talk that fancy talk, you do your thing. All right, but don't drag me into your serious voiced nonsense. And you get to speak in this stentorian tone, like, and then America laughed at this inadvertent piece of comedy. I'm John Goldstein.